Camila Reyes sat at her kitchen table at 2 in the morning, counting crumpled dollar bills with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. $23.47. That's what stood between her 7-year-old daughter and the medication that kept the leukemia from coming back. The apartment was dark except for the weak glow from the streetlight outside, casting shadows across the pile of bottles lined up on the counter like tiny soldiers, waiting for orders that might never come. Nessa was sleeping in the bedroom, her breathing soft and steady, completely unaware that her mother was coming apart at the seams, just 10 feet away. The eviction notice sat next to the bills. 9 days. That's all the time they had left before the locks changed and their belongings ended up on the sidewalk. Camila had already sold the television, the laptop, the jewelry her aunt gave her for her quinceañera, even the coffee maker that had been a wedding gift back when she still believed in happy endings. The only thing left was her mother's wedding ring, a simple gold band with a tiny diamond that caught the light when Camila turned it between her fingers. Tomorrow morning, she had an appointment at the pawn shop on 5th Street. The guy behind the counter had already told her he'd give her $800 for it. $800 wouldn't even cover half of next month's rent, but it would buy Nessa's medication for 2 more weeks. The phone buzzed on the table, making Camila jump. She already knew who it was before looking at the screen. Chicago Memorial Hospital Billing Department. They called 17 times a day now, sometimes 18. $340,000. That's what saving Nessa's life had cost when the insurance company decided that experimental leukemia treatment for a 6-year-old didn't meet their criteria for coverage. The collections agency had already threatened legal action, wage garnishment, court dates. Words that sounded like prison sentences to someone who barely made $2,000 a month waiting tables at Crimson and Clover. Camila let the call go to voicemail. She didn't have the strength to hear another automated voice telling her that her account was severely past due, that immediate payment was required, that failure to respond would result in further action. She knew all of this already. She lived it every single day, every single hour, every single breath that felt like drowning on dry land. Nessa coughed from the bedroom, just once, but it was enough to send ice water through Camila's veins. Every cough, every fever, every moment of fatigue could mean the cancer was back. The doctors had said Nessa was in remission, that the treatment worked, that they'd beaten it. But they'd also said the next 2 years were critical. Any sign of relapse required immediate intervention. Immediate intervention required money Camila didn't have. She pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to stop the tears that came anyway. Tomorrow she'd pawn the ring. Next week, she'd figure out where they'd sleep when the eviction went through. Maybe her grandmother's place, even though there was barely room for the old woman herself in that tiny studio apartment across town. Maybe a shelter. Maybe her car, if she could keep making the payments long enough to avoid repossession. The wedding ring felt heavy in her hand. Her mother had worn it for 32 years before the heart attack took her. Camila had been 19, barely old enough to understand that life could just stop without warning, that people you loved could be there one moment and gone the next. She'd promised herself she'd never sell it, that she'd pass it down to Nessa someday, along with stories about the grandmother who'd never get to meet her. But promises didn't pay for medication. Sentiment didn't keep 7-year-olds alive. Camila slipped the ring into her pocket and stood up, her knees aching from the double shift she'd worked earlier. Her feet throbbed in the cheap sneakers she hid under her work slacks, the ones with the sole starting to separate that she couldn't afford to replace. She had another shift starting in 6 hours at Crimson and Clover, the upscale steakhouse in downtown Chicago, where politicians ate with CEOs and criminals hid in plain sight among the powerful. The tips were good when customers were happy, Sometimes they were generous. Sometimes Camila walked out with $300 for an 8-hour shift. But more often it was closer to $150, and after taxes and tip share with the kitchen staff and the bartenders, she'd be lucky to take home $100. She needed a miracle. The kind that didn't exist outside of fairy tales and movies. The kind that definitely didn't happen to broke single mothers who measured their worth in dollar bills counted at 2 in the morning. What Camila didn't know, couldn't possibly know as she finally crawled into bed beside her sleeping daughter, was that in exactly 7 hours, she'd be standing in front of a man who'd change everything. A man whose name made hardened criminals cross themselves. A man who'd come to Crimson and Clover to eat his final meal. And what he'd write on a receipt would either save her daughter's life or destroy what was left of Camila's soul. The alarm went off at 7:30. Camila had maybe slept 90 minutes, her dreams full of eviction notices that turned into hospital bills, that turned into her daughter's face asking why mommy couldn't make the bad things stop. She made breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, watching Nessa eat with the careful attention of someone looking for signs of sickness in every bite, every swallow, every breath. Her grandmother arrived at 8:15 to watch Nessa while Camila worked. The old woman's hands shook more than they used to, and her eyes held questions Camila couldn't answer. Where would they go when the eviction happened? How would they manage? What was the plan? Camila kissed them both goodbye and drove her beat-up Honda toward downtown, the check engine light glowing like an accusation on the dashboard. Crimson and Clover occupied a building that looked more like a private club than a restaurant. Dark wood panels, brass fixtures, leather booths that probably cost more than Camila's car. She'd been working there for 14 months, ever since the medical bills started piling up, and one job wasn't enough anymore. The place had a reputation. Not the kind you advertised, but the kind everyone knew about if they paid attention. Certain people ate there. People who didn't wait in line. People who got the corner booths and the private rooms and the kind of service that came with absolute discretion. Desmond Cowell, the owner, paid for that discretion in ways that didn't show up on tax returns. Protection money, people whispered. Insurance that the restaurant never had problems with health inspectors or liquor licenses or the occasional incident that required making witnesses forget what they'd seen. Camila clocked in at 3:45 for the dinner shift. Her manager, Holland Price, was waiting by the server station with an expression that made Camila's stomach tighten. Holland was 40-something, perfectly put together, the kind of woman who never seemed stressed even when the kitchen was on fire and a senator was complaining about his overcooked salmon. But right now, Holland looked nervous. "Table 7 tonight," Holland said without preamble. "Your section." Camila nodded. Table 7 was booth 7, tucked in the back corner with a view of the entire dining room. Every Thursday night at 9 o'clock, the same man sat there alone. Every Thursday, for the past 8 months that Camila had been assigned to that section, she'd served him. Viktor Kozlov. Even his name felt dangerous to think too loud. Camila knew who he was the same way everyone in Chicago knew who he was, even if they pretended not to. Head of the Kozlov family, the organization that controlled half the city's underground operations. Gambling, protection rackets, loan sharking, things people didn't talk about in polite company. The FBI had tried to bring him down twice. Both times, witnesses disappeared or changed their stories. Evidence vanished. Prosecutors received threats that made them reconsider their career choices. 43 bodies, the rumors said. 43 people dead because of Viktor Kozlov's orders. Nobody could prove it. Nobody lived long enough to testify. But everyone knew. And every Thursday night, he came to Crimson and Clover and ate dinner alone in booth 7. He requested you specifically tonight. Holland added, her voice dropping even lower. First time he's ever requested anyone by name. The floor seemed to tilt under Camila's feet. In 8 months of serving Viktor Kozlov his perfectly cooked steaks and his expensive wine, he'd never said more than a few words to her. Please and thank you, delivered in a voice like gravel wrapped in silk. He tipped exactly 20%, never more, never less. He never made eye contact longer than necessary. He treated her the way rich people treated furniture, present but not particularly interesting. Why? Camila heard herself ask. Holland's jaw tightened. I don't ask questions I don't want answers to. Neither should you. Just give him whatever he wants, smile, and don't mess this up. The shift started the way they always did. Early bird specials for the older couples who like to eat at 5. Business dinners for the corporate types trying to impress clients. Families celebrating birthdays and anniversaries. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that in a few hours, the restaurant would transform into something else entirely. Camila was refilling water glasses when her phone buzzed in her pocket. She checked it in the server station, away from customers. A text from her grandmother. Nessa has a fever, 99.8. Gave her children's Tylenol. Just wanted you to know. The water pitcher almost slipped from Camila's hands. 99.8 wasn't high. Not really. Could just be a normal kid fever from playing too hard or fighting off a cold. But for Nessa, every fever was a potential emergency. Every temperature spike could mean the leukemia was back. The protocol was clear. Anything over 100 degrees required an immediate trip to the emergency room for blood work. Camila texted back with fingers that barely worked. Keep me updated. If it goes over 100, call me right away. The next 2 hours crawled by like years. Camila checked her phone every 5 minutes between tables. The fever held steady at 99.5. Not quite emergency territory, but close enough to make Camila's chest feel like someone was sitting on it. At 7:15, she was setting up booth 7 when Holland appeared again, this time with someone Camila didn't recognize. Tall, maybe early 30s, with the kind of clean-cut appearance that screamed military or law enforcement. He wore a server's uniform, but it didn't fit him right, like he was playing dress-up. This is Gage Sullivan, Holland said. New sommelier. He'll be handling wine service for the VIP tables tonight. Gage smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He shook Camila's hand with a grip that lasted half a second too long. Heard you're Viktor Kozlov, server. Must be interesting. Something about his tone set off alarm bells. Camila pulled her hand back. It's just a table. Right, just a table. Gage's smile got wider and colder at the same time. Well, if you need anything tonight, wine recommendations, anything at all, just let me know. He walked away before Camila could respond. Holland was already gone, disappearing into the kitchen with the kind of speed that suggested she wanted nothing to do with whatever was happening. The dining room filled up fast after 7:30. Businessmen in expensive suits, women in jewelry that cost more than Camila's annual salary, people who laughed too loud and drank too much, and left tips that could have paid her electric bill. Camila moved through her tables on autopilot, smiling until her face hurt, pretending everything was fine, while her phone burned a hole in her pocket and her daughter ran a fever at home. At 8:30, Gage found her near the wine cellar. The space was narrow, dim, lined with bottles that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He blocked the exit, casual but deliberate. We need to talk, he said quietly, and you need to listen very carefully. Camila's heart started hammering. I have tables, This is more important than tables. Gage pulled out a small leather wallet, flipped it open. A gold badge caught the light. Federal Bureau of Investigation. I'm not really a sommelier. And tonight, you're going to help me close a 3-year investigation into Viktor Kozlov. The wine cellar suddenly felt like a cage. Camila looked at the badge, then at Gage's face, trying to understand what was happening. I don't know anything about him. I just bring him food. You don't need to know anything. You just need to do exactly what I tell you. Gage's voice stayed calm, almost friendly, which somehow made it worse. When Kozlov orders dessert tonight, you'll serve him coffee. I'll provide the cup. You pour from the pot. You set it down. You walk away. That's it. The implications hit Camila like a fist to the stomach. What's in the coffee? Justice. Gage's expression didn't change. Viktor Kozlov has 43 murders tied to his organization. 43 families who never got closure because witnesses disappeared and evidence vanished. He's a cancer on this city. Tonight, that ends. You want me to poison him? The words came out as barely a whisper. I want you to serve coffee. What happens after that is between the United States government and a man who's been evading justice for 20 years. Gage stepped closer, his voice dropping even lower. You have a daughter, 7 years old, leukemia survivor, $340,000 in medical debt. Collections agencies calling daily. Eviction in 9 days. Ice flooded through Camila's veins. How do you know? We know everything, Camila. Everything. Gage's smile was gone now. We also know your grandmother watches your daughter while you work. We know her visa status is questionable. One call from me to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and she's on a plane back to Mexico within 48 hours. Your daughter goes into emergency foster care while you figure out childcare. Except you can't figure out childcare because you'll be facing charges as an accessory to illegal immigration. The room was spinning. Camila grabbed the wine rack to steady herself. You're threatening my family. I'm giving you a choice. Help your country remove a dangerous criminal or deal with the consequences of harboring an illegal immigrant. Gage's tone was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing the weather. Your grandmother's documentation expires in 6 weeks. I can make problems appear, or I can make them disappear. Your call. Camila couldn't breathe. This couldn't be real. Federal agents didn't threaten children. They didn't blackmail waitresses into committing murder. But the badge was real. Gage's eyes were real. And the cold certainty in his voice was real. I need to think. You have 90 minutes before Kozlov arrives. That's all the thinking time you get. Gage moved past her toward the exit, then paused. For what it's worth, you're doing the right thing. 43 families deserve justice. Your daughter deserves a mother who's not in prison. Sometimes the right choice is the one that keeps the people we love safe. He left her there in the wine cellar, surrounded by bottles worth thousands of dollars, trying not to vomit. Camila's phone buzzed, another text from her grandmother. Fever at 100.1. Should I take her to ER? Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely type a response. Give her another dose of Tylenol. If it doesn't go down in 30 minutes, yes, take her. She had to get through this shift. Had to smile and serve and pretend her world wasn't collapsing. Had to decide in the next 90 minutes if she could live with being a killer or die trying to stay innocent. The dining room felt like a dream sequence when she walked back out. Everything too bright, too loud, voices blending together into meaningless noise. Camila refilled drinks and took orders and cleared plates, moving through the motions while her brain screamed in the background. Could she do it? Could she serve poisoned coffee to a man and walk away? Viktor Kozlov was a monster. Everyone knew it. 43 murders. How many lives destroyed? How many families torn apart? If anyone deserved to die, wasn't it him? But murder was murder. Didn't matter who the victim was. Didn't matter if he deserved it. Taking a life made you a killer. Full stop. Except Gage was right about one thing. Camila had a daughter who needed her. If she refused and Gage followed through on his threats, Nessa would lose her mother and her great-grandmother in one move. She'd end up in foster care, bouncing between strangers while her medical needs went unmet. The leukemia would come back. Without Camila fighting for her, advocating for her, Nessa wouldn't survive. What kind of mother chose principles over her child's life? What kind of person participated in murder? The questions chased each other in circles until Camila wanted to scream. At 8:55, the atmosphere in the restaurant shifted. Conversations got quieter. People glanced toward the entrance. The kitchen staff moved faster. Even Holland looked tense, straightening menus that didn't need straightening. Viktor Kozlov had arrived. He moved through the dining room like he owned it, which in a way he probably did. But something was different tonight. Camila saw it immediately. Viktor had always carried himself with the kind of controlled power that made people step aside without being asked. Tonight, he moved carefully, deliberately, like every step required concentration. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost $5,000, Italian leather shoes, a watch that caught the light when he adjusted his cuff. But his face looked thinner than Camila remembered. His skin had a yellowish tint that makeup couldn't quite hide, and his eyes, usually sharp and calculating, held something that looked almost like peace. Two men in dark suits flanked him to the door, then peeled off to separate tables nearby. Security. Always there, always watching. Viktor continued alone to booth 7, sliding into the leather seat with movements that seemed stiff, pained. Camila's feet felt like lead as she approached the table. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to call in sick, to be anywhere but here. But she plastered on her professional smile and pulled out her order pad. "Good evening, Mr. Kozlov. Can I start you with something to drink?" He looked up at her, really looked at her for the first time in 8 months. His eyes were gray, the color of storm clouds, and they studied her face with an intensity that made her want to step back. "Good evening, Camila." Her name in his voice, rough with an accent that softened the edges, startled her. "I'd like you to choose the wine tonight. Something meaningful. Something you'd serve at a celebration." She blinked. In 8 months, he'd never asked her opinion on anything. "What are you celebrating?" A smile flickered across his face, sad and knowing. The end of something difficult. The beginning of peace. He paused. "Your daughter. How is she?" The floor dropped out from under Camila's feet. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Viktor's expression didn't change. "Nessa, 7 years old. Leukemia survivor. Beautiful child. You're very lucky." Terror and confusion warred in Camila's chest. "How do you... I know everything about everyone who enters my world, even unwillingly." He gestured to the wine list. "Please, choose something that matters. I trust your judgment." Camila's hands shook as she opened the wine list, not really seeing the words. Viktor Kozlov knew about Nessa, knew her name, knew about the leukemia, which meant he probably knew about the debt, the eviction, everything. She forced herself to focus. Meaningful wine, a celebration of endings and peace. Her eyes landed on a 2001 Barolo, bold and complex, but with surprising elegance underneath the power. The Barolo, she heard herself say. It's uncompromising but refined, strong enough to stand alone. Viktor nodded slowly. You've described me perfectly, except the refined part. That same sad smile appeared and vanished. Bring it. And Camila, whatever happens tonight, remember that you've already made your choice. Live with it bravely. He knew. Somehow he knew about Gage and the FBI and the poisoned coffee. The realization hit her like ice water. Viktor Kozlov knew someone was trying to kill him tonight, and he'd come anyway. She walked to the wine cellar on legs that barely held her weight, pulled the Barolo from the rack with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. When she turned around, Gage was there. Good choice, he said, glancing at the bottle. He'll appreciate it. Remember, when he orders dessert, I'll bring you the coffee cup. Just pour and serve. Nothing else. Camila wanted to tell him that Viktor knew, that the whole plan was compromised, that this was insane. But the words stuck in her throat. Because if she told Gage that Viktor knew, what would he do? Call it off? Or accelerate the timeline? Shoot Viktor right there in the dining room? She said nothing, just nodded and carried the wine back to booth 7. The meal unfolded in surreal slow motion. Viktor ordered Ruby Nakamura's chef recommendations: foie gras with blackberry gastrique, dry-aged ribeye with truffle butter, roasted bone marrow. Camila served each course, watching him savor every bite like it was sacred. He ate slowly, carefully, taking small portions and leaving most of each plate untouched. Not because the food wasn't perfect, but because he was eating for memory, not hunger. Between courses, he talked. Not the way powerful men usually talk to waitresses, with dismissal or condescension. Viktor spoke to Camila like she was an equal, like her opinion mattered. He asked about the wine, and she explained the notes of cherry and tobacco, the way it opened up with time. He asked about her thoughts on the food, and she found herself describing Ruby's techniques with more knowledge than she'd realized she had. And then, halfway through the ribeye, Viktor said something that made the world stop. My daughter would have been 31 today. She loved chocolate soufflé. The past tense cut through Camila like a blade. She stood there, water pitcher frozen in her hand, not knowing how to respond. Viktor stared at the empty seat across from him. Alina. Her name was Alina. Beautiful girl, smart, funny, full of life. She got involved with the wrong people. Drugs. I tried everything to save her. Rehab, interventions, threats, bribes. Nothing worked. The dealer who sold her the heroin that killed her, he walked free because of a technicality. Police said there wasn't enough evidence. His hands resting on the table curled into fists. So I found him myself. Made him tell me about his suppliers, his network, everyone involved in the poison that took my daughter. And then I made them all pay. Camila's voice came out as a whisper. 43. 43 fathers, sons, brothers. 43 people who maybe had families of their own, children who loved them, mothers who cried when they didn't come home. Viktor looked up at her, and his eyes held an ocean of regret. I don't ask for forgiveness, Camila. I ask only for witness. I want someone to know that I understand what I've done, that I chose vengeance over justice, and it never brought Alina back, never made the pain stop. It only created more pain for more people. He paused, then added quietly, "Your daughter is alive. You still have time to be the parent I failed to be. Don't waste it on revenge or bitterness or fear. Just love her. That's all that matters." Tears burned in Camila's eyes. This monster, this killer, was talking about his dead child with the same tenderness she felt for Nessa. He was human, broken and guilty and drowning in regret, but human. The moment shattered when Gage appeared beside the table. "Excuse the interruption. Would you like to see the dessert menu, Mr. Kozlov?" Viktor's gaze shifted to Gage, and something flickered in those storm-gray eyes. Recognition? Suspicion? Acceptance? Chocolate souffle and coffee, black. Excellent choice. I'll have Camila bring it right out. Gage's smile was all teeth and no warmth. He walked away, and Camila knew with absolute certainty that in the next 15 minutes, she'd have to make the choice that would define the rest of her life. Help kill a man, or refuse and face the consequences? Her phone buzzed. She checked it under the guise of adjusting her apron. Text from her grandmother. "Fever down to 99.2. She's asking for you." Nessa was okay, for now. But if Camila got arrested, if her grandmother got deported, Nessa wouldn't be okay for long. In the kitchen, Ruby was plating the chocolate souffle with the kind of precision that made it look like art. Gage stood nearby, holding a white porcelain coffee cup that looked identical to all the others, except Camila knew it wasn't. "Here," Gage said, handing her the cup. "I'll pour the coffee. You just deliver it." She watched him fill the cup from a carafe that must have been prepared separately. The coffee looked normal, smelled normal. Whatever poison the FBI had chosen, it was undetectable. "Remember," Gage said quietly, "you're saving lives. Kozlov won't stop on his own. How many more people die if he walks out of here tonight?" Camila took the cup, took the dessert plate from Ruby, walked toward booth 7 with the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. Viktor saw her coming. His expression didn't change. He simply waited, hands folded on the table, perfectly calm. She set down the souffle, reached for the coffee cup. Her hands were shaking so badly the liquid almost sloshed over the rim. This was it. The moment everything changed. She could set down the cup and walk away. Viktor would drink it. He'd die, probably within minutes. The FBI would have their justice. Gage would make her problems disappear. Nessa would be safe. Or she could refuse, face arrest, deportation of her grandmother, loss of her daughter, but she'd still be able to look at herself in the mirror. Except what good was a clean conscience if Nessa died because Camila wasn't there to fight for her? The coffee cup hovered inches from the table. Viktor's eyes met hers, and in that moment, Camila saw something she'd never expected to see in the gaze of a killer. Understanding, forgiveness, permission to do what she needed to do to survive. The cup touched the table. Viktor's hand reached for it, and Camila heard herself whisper, "Don't." The single word fell between them like a stone into still water. Viktor's hand froze. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Camila could feel Gage's eyes on her from across the room, could sense the security detail tensing in the peripheral booths, could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. Victor's fingers didn't move from where they rested inches from the cup. Why? Because murder is murder. Her voice was shaking but steady. Even if you deserve it, even if justice demands it, I can't be the person who delivers death and then goes home to tuck my daughter into bed. For a long moment, Viktor just looked at her. Then he pulled his hand back, pushed the coffee cup to the side. You're braver than I ever was. He reached for the check presenter, pulled out a pen. While writing, he spoke without looking up. I have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 6 months since diagnosis. Maybe 2 weeks left. I came here tonight because this is where I wanted to spend my last meal. Not in a hospital, not surrounded by lawyers and accountants. Just here, with good food and good wine, and someone kind enough to treat me like a person instead of a monster. He signed the receipt, then added something else. Numbers, account information, an amount that made Camila's vision blur when she saw it. $340,000. Below it, in neat handwriting, your daughter deserves her mother. You deserve peace. I deserve nothing. But perhaps we both deserve mercy. He slid the receipt across the table. The money was transferred this morning before I arrived. It's real. It's clean. As clean as anything I've ever touched. Use it. Save Nessa. That's my last request. Camila stared at the numbers until they stopped making sense. I don't understand. I know everything about everyone in my world, Viktor repeated. I knew about your debt the first week you served me. I knew about the eviction, the medication, your grandmother's visa issues. I've been watching you struggle for months, trying to decide if you were worth saving. Tonight, you proved you were. You chose your principles over your survival. That's rare. That deserves to be rewarded. But I'm nobody. Why would you? Because my daughter was somebody, and I couldn't save her. Because 43 families deserved mercy I didn't give them. Because I'm dying, and I want one good thing to happen because of me, instead of in spite of me. Viktor's voice was rough with emotion he didn't bother hiding. Take the money. Let me die knowing I did one thing right. The restaurant exploded into chaos before Camila could respond. Federal agents!
Nobody move!
The front doors crashed open. Men in FBI windbreakers poured into the dining room, weapons drawn, voices shouting over each other. Diners screamed, plates shattered. Viktor's security detail started to rise, hands moving toward concealed weapons. Stand down! Viktor's voice cut through the noise like a whip crack. His men froze. Slowly, they raised their hands, weapons still holstered. Gage vaulted over the bar, gun trained on Viktor. You're under arrest for racketeering, murder, conspiracy. I know the charges, Viktor interrupted calmly. I won't resist. But let her go. She's innocent. Gage's eyes snapped to Camila, still standing there with the receipt clutched in her hand. His expression went from triumph to fury in half a second. She's compromised. She warned you. She saved me, Viktor corrected. There's a difference. Agents swarmed the booth. Hands grabbed Camila, pulling her away from the table. The receipt was torn from her fingers. Someone shoved her against the wall, patting her down for weapons while reading her rights in a voice that sounded like it was coming from underwater. I didn't do anything, Camila heard herself shouting. I just served food. You warned a federal target. Gage was in her face now, close enough that she could see the rage in his eyes. 3 years of work, blown because you couldn't follow simple instructions. I couldn't murder someone, the words ripped out of her. Even him!
You asked me to be a killer, and I said no! Viktor was being handcuffed now, agents on either side pulling him from the booth. He moved slowly, that same careful deliberation from earlier, and Camila realized with horror that he was in serious pain.
How much pain did someone have to be in to look like that while being arrested? Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, Viktor said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Diagnosed 6 months ago. Refused treatment. 2 weeks left, maybe less. Tonight was my last meal. I came here to die with dignity. The statement cut through the chaos like a blade. Agents paused. Gage's expression flickered between shock and suspicion. You're lying. Medical records are with my attorney. You'll have them within the hour. Viktor's eyes found Camila across the crowd. This woman showed me mercy I didn't deserve. That's not a crime. Let her go. She's an accessory. To what? I didn't drink the coffee. No crime was committed. You have no evidence of conspiracy because there was no conspiracy. Viktor's voice was getting weaker, but his words were precise. I ate a meal. She served it. That's all that happened here. Gage looked at the coffee cup, still sitting on the table, untouched. Then at Camila, then back at Viktor. The rage in his expression shifted to something colder. Calculation. Take Kozlov to processing, he ordered the other agents. We'll sort this out downtown. They hauled Viktor toward the exit. He stumbled on the way out, his legs giving out for a moment before the agents holding him yanked him upright. The sound he made, a sharp intake of breath that tried to be silent but wasn't, would haunt Camila for the rest of her life. Because she'd just watched a dying man be dragged out of a restaurant for crimes he'd already been sentenced to death for by his own body. The FBI wanted justice. Viktor wanted peace. And Camila had somehow ended up in the middle, holding a receipt that promised salvation and demanded she accept a gift from a monster. The agents released her 30 minutes later with warnings about leaving town and being available for questioning. Gage didn't look at her again. The receipt was bagged as evidence, the coffee cup too. The entire restaurant was a crime scene now. Camila walked to her car in a daze, sat in the driver's seat with the engine off, staring at nothing. Her phone said it was 11:43. She'd been at work for 8 hours. It felt like 8 years. A text from her grandmother. Nessa is sleeping. Fever is gone. Everything okay? Everything okay. The question was so absurd that Camila laughed, a sound that came out half sob. Nothing was okay. Everything was broken. She'd refused to commit murder and possibly thrown away her daughter's only chance at survival. Because the money Viktor had transferred, if it even existed, was evidence now. The FBI had the receipt. They'd freeze his accounts. She'd never see a penny of it. She'd done the right thing and lost everything anyway. The drive home was a blur. Camila parked outside her grandmother's building, went upstairs, paid the old woman who needed the $20 more than she should have to accept it, scooped Nessa up from the couch where she'd fallen asleep watching cartoons, carried her to the car, drove to their apartment that would belong to someone else in 9 days. She tucked Nessa into bed, kissed her forehead, and sat on the floor of the kitchen with her phone in her hand. For a long time, she just stared at the screen, trying to figure out what to do next. Then curiosity, morbid and insistent, made her fingers move. She pulled up her bank's app, logged in, checked her account balance expecting to see the same $63.18 that had been there this morning. The number on the screen didn't make sense. She blinked, refreshed the page, the number didn't change. $340,000.00. A separate notification showed a wire transfer received at 8:47 that morning, before Viktor had even arrived at the restaurant, before Gage had threatened her, before anything had happened. The money was real. Viktor had saved her daughter before he'd even sat down to his final meal, before he knew whether Camila would show him mercy or deliver his death. He'd done it anyway. And now, Camila sat on her kitchen floor, holding her phone with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, trying to understand what it meant to be saved by a monster. The next 3 days passed in a haze of phone calls and lawyers and FBI interrogations. Camila hired an attorney she couldn't afford with money she wasn't supposed to have. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Harper Cross, explained that the wire transfer had occurred before any alleged criminal conspiracy, which meant the government would have a hard time seizing it. The money was legally Camila's. For now. Gage tried everything to get it frozen. Argued it was proceeds of crime, payment for services rendered to a criminal organization, evidence in an ongoing investigation. But Viktor's attorney, a man who probably cost more per hour than Camila used to make in a month, produced documentation showing the transfer as a charitable gift. No strings attached, no services rendered, just a dying man donating to a struggling mother. Legally airtight, morally complicated. Exactly what Camila's life had become. On the 4th day, she paid Nessa's medical bills in full, watched the hospital billing representative's expression shift from skeptical to shocked when the payment cleared. $340,000 gone in one transaction. The debt that had been drowning her for 18 months, erased like it had never existed. She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt numb. The eviction notice meant nothing now. She could pay rent for years, could buy a house, could give Nessa everything she'd never been able to afford. But the money felt heavy, tainted with blood and guilt and questions she couldn't answer. On the 5th day, the news broke. Viktor Kozlov had died in FBI custody. Heart attack, the initial report said. Then complications from pancreatic cancer. Then conflicting reports about whether he'd received proper medical care during processing. Lawyers were already filing wrongful death suits. The FBI was investigating itself. Politicians were calling for hearings. And Camila sat on her couch, watching Nessa play with dolls on the floor, trying to process the fact that Viktor Kozlov had saved her daughter's life and then died in a federal holding cell without ever standing trial. His funeral was private, family only, which apparently didn't amount to much since Alina was dead and Viktor's wife had passed years ago. The news showed his attorney making a statement about how Viktor had been denied basic human rights in his final hours, how the American justice system had failed even in the moment of its supposed triumph. Camila didn't go to the funeral, didn't send flowers, didn't know if she was supposed to mourn a man who'd murdered 43 people, but had also saved her life. She was cleaning out her locker at Crimson and Clover, officially quitting now that she didn't need the job, when Holland found her. "There's someone here to see you," Holland said quietly. "Viktor's attorney. He says it's important." The attorney was waiting at booth 7, the same booth where Viktor had eaten his last meal, where he'd written the receipt that changed everything. The table had been cleaned, reset, like nothing had happened.
But Camila could still see Viktor sitting there, carefully eating his soufflé, knowing he was dying. "Miss Reyes." The attorney stood, offering his hand. "Thank you for meeting me. I'm Marcus Brennan. I handled Viktor's estate." Handled? Past tense. His affairs are settled as of this morning. Marcus pulled a manila envelope from his briefcase. Viktor left instructions for me to deliver this to you personally after his death. Camila took the envelope with hands that had finally stopped shaking. Inside was a letter, handwritten on heavy stationery, and a second, smaller envelope. She opened the letter. Viktor's handwriting was surprisingly elegant, each word carefully formed. Camila, if you're reading this, I'm dead. Probably in FBI custody. Possibly in more pain than I care to describe.
Definitely paying for crimes I committed without remorse until it was too late to matter. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve peace. 43 people are dead because of my choices. 43 families destroyed because I chose vengeance over healing. My daughter is dead because I failed her. These are facts I can't change, but I can change your story and Nessa's. The money is yours. Do with it what you will. Pay your bills, buy a house, start over. But I have one request. Don't let it just disappear into your life like it was always supposed to be there. Use some of it to help others, not to absolve my guilt. Nothing can do that. But because you have the power now to be the person I should have been. In the second envelope is information for a foundation I established 3 months ago in Alina's name. It provides addiction recovery services for young people who can't afford treatment. It's funded through my estate, but it needs someone to run it. Someone who understands loss and desperation and the impossible choices poverty forces on good people. I'm not asking you to do this. I'm offering you the opportunity if you want it. You could also walk away, take the money, and never think about me again. Both choices are valid. What you did for me in that restaurant, showing mercy to someone who deserved none, was the first genuine kindness I'd experienced in 20 years. You saw a dying man instead of a monster. You chose your principles over your survival. That decision saved me in ways you can't understand. It didn't erase my sins, but it reminded me that goodness still exists in the world. Thank you for that. Thank you for seeing me as human in my final moments. I hope Nessa lives a long, healthy, beautiful life. I hope you find peace. And I hope someday you can think of me without guilt or regret, just as a broken man who tried to do one thing right before the end. Viktor. Camila read the letter 3 times, then opened the second envelope. Inside was information about the Alina Kozlov Foundation, incorporation documents, bank account details, contact information for the board of directors, and a note from Marcus Brennan explaining that if Camila agreed to direct the foundation, she'd receive a modest salary and full authority over how the money was distributed. She looked up at Marcus, who was watching her with patient understanding. Why me? Because Viktor believed you'd use the power responsibly. Because you have personal experience with the kind of desperation that drives people to impossible choices. Because you showed mercy when you had every reason not to. Marcus paused. You don't have to decide today. Think about it. But the foundation exists whether you run it or not. Viktor made sure of that. After Marcus left, Camila sat alone in booth 7 for a long time. People moved around her, servers setting tables for the dinner shift, the restaurant coming back to life like the chaos of 5 days ago had never happened. She thought about Viktor, about Alina, about 43 families who'd lost people to his vengeance, about Gage and his poisoned coffee cup, about the impossible choice she'd faced and the one she'd made. And she thought about Nessa, healthy and alive, who'd never know how close they'd come to losing everything.
The money could disappear into their lives. Comfortable existence, good schools, medical care, security.
Everything Camila had fought for. Or it could become something more. She made her decision 6 weeks later, after consulting with Harper Cross and her grandmother and spending sleepless nights weighing the implications. The Alina Kozlov Foundation opened its first recovery center in Pilsen, Chicago's predominantly Latino neighborhood, where addiction had devastated too many families. Camila became its director. She used 10% of Viktor's gift to fund operations for the first year. The rest went into a trust for Nessa's future, untouchable until she turned 18. The foundation didn't advertise Viktor's involvement. The website mentioned Alina, a young woman who died of overdose,
Whose family wanted to prevent others from suffering the same fate.
Nothing about the Kozlov name. Nothing about the money's origins. Just help for people who needed it. Camila hired counselors and medical staff, created programs for adolescents struggling with addiction, offered services regardless of ability to pay. She worked long hours and came home exhausted, but with a sense of purpose she'd never felt waiting tables. She told herself she was doing this for Alina, for the 43 families, for everyone Viktor had hurt, that using his money for good was a form of redemption, even if it couldn't bring anyone back. But late at night, when Nessa was sleeping and the apartment was quiet, Camila admitted the truth. She was doing this for Viktor, too.
For the dying man who'd eaten chocolate souffle with the same tenderness he described his daughter.
For the killer who'd shown her mercy by saving Nessa. For the human being she'd seen underneath the monster. Broken and guilty, and trying to do one good thing before the end. 6 months after Viktor's death, Gage showed up at the foundation. Camila was in her office reviewing applications for a new counselor position when her assistant said an FBI agent wanted to speak with her. Gage looked different. Thinner. Tired. Like he hadn't slept well in a while. "I'm not here officially," he said, standing awkwardly in her doorway. "I wanted to apologize." Camila set down her pen. "For trying to make me kill someone, or for threatening my family?" "Both. All of it." Gage sat down without being invited, his shoulders slumped.
The investigation into Viktor's death concluded last week.
Improper medical care during intake. Protocols violated. Several agents disciplined. I was one of them. Good. It doesn't bring him back. Doesn't make what I did to you right. Gage looked at his hands. I convinced myself that the ends justified the means. That taking down Viktor Kozlov was worth any cost. But all I did was deny a dying man basic dignity and traumatize an innocent woman. Some victory. Camila wanted to yell at him, wanted to list every way he'd threatened her, manipulated her, tried to turn her into something she wasn't. But the anger had dulled over months of therapy and long conversations with Harper Cross about trauma and impossible choices. "Why are you really here?" she asked instead. "Because I saw what you did with his money. The foundation, the recovery programs. People are getting help because of you." Gage finally met her eyes. "I spent 3 years trying to get justice for 43 families. You're actually making a difference. I wanted to acknowledge that, and to say I'm sorry for not seeing another path." After he left, Camila sat in her office staring at the wall where she'd hung a photo of the foundation's first client success story. A 19-year-old who'd been clean for 90 days, smiling with her family who'd never given up on her. Justice and mercy, punishment and redemption, good people and bad people. Except nobody was purely either. Just broken humans trying to find their way through impossible circumstances, making choices they'd have to live with forever. Viktor had chosen vengeance, and it destroyed him.
Gage had chosen righteousness and lost his humanity.
Camila had chosen mercy and found purpose. None of it was simple. None of it was clean. But it was real. A year after that night at Crimson and Clover, Camila took Nessa to the park on a Saturday afternoon. They fed ducks at the pond and played on the swings and ate ice cream that dripped down their hands in the summer heat. Normal mother-daughter things. Simple joys that used to feel impossible. Nessa was 8 now, healthy and thriving. Her last cancer screening had been clear. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. Every day without relapse was a gift. "Mama," Nessa said while they sat on a bench watching other kids play, "my teacher says we should be thankful for our blessings. What are you thankful for?" Camila looked at her daughter. This miracle of a human who'd survived leukemia and poverty, and a mother who'd once been so desperate she'd almost agreed to murder. "I'm thankful for you. Every single day." What else? What else? How could she explain to an 8-year-old that she was thankful for a dying Mafia boss who'd shown her mercy by saving them? That she was grateful for impossible choices that taught her the difference between justice and vengeance? That she'd learned more about humanity from a killer's final meal than from years of doing everything right? "I'm thankful for second chances," Camila said finally, "for the opportunity to help other people the way we were helped when we needed it most." Nessa considered this seriously. "Like the people at your work?" "Exactly like that." "Then I'm thankful for second chances too."
They sat there while the sun filtered through the trees, and kids laughed on the playground, and the world continued turning like it always did, full of beauty and horror, kindness and cruelty, monsters and mercy. Camila thought about Viktor Kozlov eating chocolate souffle alone in booth 7, about the receipt that had changed her life, about the impossible truth that sometimes salvation came from the darkest places, and goodness required accepting gifts from people who'd done terrible things. She'd been a waitress serving a Mafia boss's final meal. What he wrote on a receipt had saved her daughter's life, given her purpose, and taught her the most important lesson she'd ever learned: that everyone deserves mercy. Everyone deserves witness. And sometimes, the person who needs saving is the one who's already condemned. Waiting alone at a table for one, hoping someone will see them as human in the moments they have left. Viktor never got the trial he deserved, never faced justice in a courtroom, never answered for 43 murders or countless other crimes. But he'd answered to Camila in his final hours, confessed his sins to a waitress who had every reason to hate him, sought witness from someone who chose to see a dying man instead of a monster. And maybe that was its own kind of justice. Imperfect, complicated, nothing like what the law books promised, but real, human. The kind of redemption that happened in quiet moments between broken people who recognized each other's pain. Camila would never know if Viktor found peace in his final moments, would never know if her mercy meant anything to him beyond a practical transaction of blood money for dignity, would never fully reconcile using a killer's fortune to save lives. But she knew this: Nessa was alive. Families were getting help. The Alina Kozlov Foundation had served 217 people in its first year. 217 chances at recovery. 217 second opportunities at life. That had to count for something. Had to mean something in the cosmic balance sheet of good and evil. Viktor Kozlov had been a monster who committed atrocities. That truth didn't change. But he'd also been a father who lost his daughter and couldn't find his way back from the grief. A dying man who wanted one act of kindness to define his end instead of decades of violence.
A human being who recognized goodness when he saw it and chose to protect it even when it served no purpose except being right. Both truths existed simultaneously: the monster and the man, the killer and the father, the criminal and the broken human seeking witness. And Camila, standing in the middle of that impossible contradiction, had chosen mercy over judgment, had accepted a gift she didn't want in order to save a life she loved more than her own, had transformed blood money into hope for families drowning in desperation. She didn't have to like it, didn't have to feel good about it, didn't have to absolve Viktor's sins or pretend the money came from anything but violence. She just had to live with it, bravely, the way Viktor had asked, the way she taught herself to do. One day at a time, with Nessa by her side and the Foundation's work giving meaning to what could have been just another tragedy in a city full of them. The receipt was still in evidence somewhere, locked in an FBI storage facility. But Camila didn't need the physical paper anymore. Viktor's words were branded into her memory. Your daughter deserves her mother. You deserve peace. I deserve nothing. But perhaps we both deserve mercy. Perhaps they did. Perhaps everyone did. Perhaps that was the real lesson hiding underneath everything else, that mercy wasn't about deserving. It was about being human enough to offer it anyway. Camila Reyes had been a waitress barely surviving, drowning in debt, measuring her worth in dollar bills counted at 2 a.m. Then she'd served a Mafia boss his final meal, made an impossible choice, and discovered that sometimes salvation came from the last place you'd expect to find it. The story didn't have a clean ending. Real life never did. But it had meaning, purpose. A second chance built on the ruins of someone else's destruction. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. Nessa tugged on her sleeve. Mama, can we come back tomorrow? Camila smiled, pulling her daughter close. We can come back every day if you want. Every day seems like a lot. Then we'll come back whenever you need to. How's that? Perfect. They walked home through streets Camila used to fear, past buildings that used to represent everything she couldn't afford, under a sky that looked the same as it always had, but somehow felt different now. Lighter, more open, full of possibility instead of dread. She'd never forget Viktor Kozlov. Never stop questioning whether using his money was right or wrong, or somewhere in the complicated middle. Never fully resolve the moral paradox of being saved by a monster. But she'd keep living, keep helping others, keep showing Nessa that even when life presented impossible choices, you could still find your way to something good on the other side. That night, after tucking Nessa into bed, Camila stood in her kitchen looking at the spot where she used to count bills at 2 a.m. The wedding ring was back on her finger now, no longer a last resort, but a connection to her mother, who would have understood impossible choices better than anyone. Her phone buzzed, a text from the Foundation's lead counselor. Just wanted to let you know, the girl from last month, 90 days clean today. Her mom cried when I told her, this work matters. This work matters. 3 words that carried more weight than any amount of money. Camila typed back, it matters because people like you care. Thank you. She set the phone down and looked around her apartment.
Not fancy, not perfect, but theirs. Paid for with blood money transformed into hope, built on the foundation of one dying man's attempt at redemption and one desperate woman's refusal to become a killer. The story wasn't over, probably never would be completely, but this chapter felt different from the ones before it. Felt like the beginning of something instead of the end. And maybe that was the real gift Viktor had given her. Not just the money, not just saving Nessa, but the understanding that life was complicated and messy and full of moral gray areas. And you still had to choose mercy anyway. Still had to find the human underneath the monster. Still had to live bravely with the consequences of impossible decisions. Camila turned off the lights and went to bed, ready for whatever tomorrow brought. The past year had taught her she was stronger than she'd known, braver than she'd believed, capable of carrying weight she thought would crush her. She'd been a waitress serving a Mafia boss his final meal. What he wrote on a receipt had changed her life forever. Not because of the numbers, but because of the choice they represented, the mercy she'd shown, the humanity she'd recognized, the impossible decision that defined who she wanted to be. And every day since, she'd been living up to that choice, making it mean something, turning tragedy into purpose. Viktor Kozlov was dead. His crimes were real. The pain he'd caused couldn't be undone. But Nessa was alive. The foundation was helping people. And Camila had learned the most important lesson of her life from the last person she'd ever expected to teach it. That sometimes, salvation came wrapped in darkness. Sometimes mercy required accepting gifts from monsters. Sometimes the right choice was the one that left you carrying impossible weight for the rest of your life. And sometimes that was okay, because the weight meant you were still standing, still fighting, still choosing to see the human underneath the horror, still brave enough to live with it. That receipt had changed everything. But the real transformation wasn't in the bank account or the foundation or even in Nessa's recovery. It was in Camila herself, in the woman who'd faced an impossible choice and made the one that let her sleep at night, who'd seen a monster's humanity without excusing his crimes, who'd accepted mercy from someone who deserved none and used it to show mercy to others. She was no longer the desperate waitress counting bills at 2 a.m. She was someone who'd survived the kind of moral test most people never faced. Someone who'd chosen principles over survival and somehow lived to tell about it. Someone who understood that life wasn't about being perfect. It was about being human, flawed and struggling and doing the best you could with impossible circumstances. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The story of Camila Reyes and Viktor Kozlov didn't have a Hollywood ending. There was no courtroom drama, no triumphant music, no clear resolution to the moral questions their encounter raised. Just a woman and her daughter, building a life on the complicated foundation of mercy shown and received. Just a foundation helping people who'd been written off by everyone else. Just the daily choice to turn darkness into light, one small decision at a time. That was the real miracle. Not the money, not the dramatic final meal, not even Nessa's survival, but the transformation of one desperate moment into a lifetime of purpose. The alchemy of turning a killer's blood money into hope for the hopeless. The courage to accept an impossible gift and use it to be the person Viktor Kozlov should have been. Camila fell asleep that night the way she did every night now. Grateful, exhausted, and certain she'd made the right choice. even if it was complicated, even if it would never be simple, even if she'd carry the weight of it forever. Because some weights were worth carrying. Some choices defined you in ways that mattered. Some receipts changed more than bank accounts. They changed souls. And Viktor Kozlov's final gift to Camila Reyes wasn't the $340,000 that saved her daughter's life. It was the lesson that everyone, even monsters, deserved to be seen as human in their final moments. That mercy transcended judgment. That redemption was possible even for the irredeemable. And that sometimes, the person serving your final meal was exactly the witness you needed to die with dignity instead of despair. That truth, more than anything else, was worth remembering, worth honoring, worth building a life around. So Camila did exactly that. Every single day.
One choice at a time. One act of mercy at a time. One person helped at a time. Until the darkness Viktor left behind transformed into something resembling light. Not perfect, not pure, but real, human, good enough. And in the end, good enough was more than most people ever achieved. It was everything that mattered in a world that rarely made sense, where monsters could show kindness and saints could harbor cruelty, where the line between good and evil ran through every human heart instead of between them. Camila Reyes learned to live in that complexity, to hold contradictions without letting them tear her apart, to accept that she'd been saved by someone who destroyed others, and to honor that gift by becoming the kind of person who saved people in return. Years passed. The foundation grew. Lives changed. Families healed.
And through it all, Camila carried Viktor's final lesson like a compass pointing toward true north.
Everyone deserves mercy. Everyone deserves to be witnessed. Everyone deserves the chance to do one good thing before the end. Even killers, even monsters, even broken people who'd made choices they could never take back. Because if Viktor Kozlov, with 43 murders on his conscience and a legacy of violence stretching across decades, could find a moment of grace in his final hours, then maybe redemption was possible for anyone. Maybe mercy was the most powerful force in the universe. Maybe seeing the human in the monster was the bravest thing anyone could do. Camila believed that now, lived it, taught it to Nessa through example rather than words. And when Nessa was old enough, when the time was right,
Camila would tell her the whole truth about the night at Crimson and Clover, about Viktor Kozlov and the receipt and the impossible choice, about how their comfortable life was built on blood money, transformed by intention and love into something that helped hundreds of people find their way back from darkness. She'd tell Nessa that life wasn't simple, that good people made hard choices, that accepting help from imperfect sources didn't make you complicit in their sins, that mercy was stronger than judgment, that compassion could transform even the darkest legacies, that everyone deserved to be seen as human, especially in their final moments, and that sometimes the person who saved your life was the last person you'd expect. For now, though, Nessa just knew her mother ran a place that helped people, that they had enough. That love mattered more than anything else. Those lessons were enough for an 8-year-old. The rest would come with time and maturity, and the wisdom that came from watching her mother turn tragedy into purpose, fear into courage, desperation into hope. Camila stood at her kitchen window,
watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Nessa would wake up soon. They'd have breakfast together. Maybe go to the park again. Live another ordinary day in the extraordinary life they'd built on the ruins of impossible circumstances. And somewhere, in whatever came after death, Camila hoped Viktor Kozlov had found peace, hoped he'd been reunited with Alina, hoped he knew that his final act of mercy had rippled out in ways he could never have imagined, touching hundreds of lives, saving families, giving people second chances they wouldn't have had otherwise. She hoped he knew that Camila had kept her promise, that she'd lived bravely with the choice they'd made together that night in Booth 7, that she'd honored his gift by becoming exactly the kind of person the world needed more of. Someone who chose mercy over judgment, who saw humanity in unexpected places, who understood that redemption wasn't about erasing the past, but about choosing a different future. Someone who'd been a waitress serving a mafia boss his final meal, and who'd walked away transformed by what he wrote on a receipt. The sun climbed higher. The city woke up. Life continued with all its beauty and horror, joy and pain, darkness and light. And Camila Reyes stood in the middle of it all, grateful and strong, and certain of one thing above everything else: that mercy mattered, that compassion could change the world, that seeing the human and the monster was the most important thing anyone could do, and that sometimes salvation came from the darkest places, carried by broken people trying to do one good thing before the end. That was the truth Viktor had taught her, the lesson she'd carry forever, the foundation on which she'd built a life worth living. And it was enough, more than enough. It was everything she needed to keep going, keep helping, keep choosing mercy in a world that desperately needed more of it. One day at a time, one person at a time, one act of compassion at a time, until the darkness transformed into light, and the monsters revealed their humanity, and mercy won over judgment every single time. That was Camila's mission now, her purpose, her calling. And it had all started with a receipt written by a dying man who'd wanted one good thing to remember him by. She'd made sure he got it, made sure his final gift became a legacy of healing instead of just another tragedy in a city full of them. Made sure that Viktor Kozlov, for all his sins, would be remembered not just as a killer, but as someone who'd done one profoundly good thing when it mattered most. That was mercy. That was justice. That was the complicated, messy, beautiful truth of what it meant to be human. And Camila Reyes carried that truth forward every single day, grateful for impossible lessons learned from the last person she'd ever expected to teach them. If this story moved you, if it challenged the way you think about mercy and judgment and the complicated nature of humanity, we need you to do something.
Hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Because we're building something here. A community that understands life isn't black and white. That good people make hard choices. That sometimes the right thing costs everything. Drop a comment below. Tell us about a time you had to show mercy when it was hard. Share your thoughts on Camila's choice. Inspire others with your story. Because your voice matters. Your experience matters. And together, we can create a space where real, complicated, beautiful human stories get told without judgment. We've got more stories coming that will make you think, make you feel, and remind you why being human is both the hardest and most important thing we'll ever do.
Stories about impossible choices and unexpected redemption.
About people who found light in the darkest places. About mercy that changed everything. Don't miss the next one. Subscribe now. Turn on that notification bell. And let's keep this conversation going in the comments. Because these stories, they're not just entertainment. They're reminders that we're all doing our best with impossible circumstances, that mercy matters, that second chances are sacred, that everyone deserves to be seen as human, even in their worst moments. See you in the next story. And remember, sometimes salvation comes from the last place you'd expect to find it. Stay open, stay compassionate, stay human. We'll see you soon.